Welcome back. We know that Kavanaugh's nomination fight will impact the midterms, but we just don't know how. President Trump said today he thinks the fight helps Republicans.
Everywhere I go, I'm going to Pennsylvania, it's the same thing. They are so in favor of Judge Kavanaugh. You've never seen anything like it. I actually think it's like a rallying cry for the Republicans. They are so in favor of Judge Kavanaugh.
And some Republican Senate candidates are definitely hoping Kavanaugh helps them. In Indiana, the Republican challenger is attacking the incumbent Senator Donnelly, Democrat there, Joe Donnelly, for his anti-Kavanaugh position, calling him, quote, more concerned with standing with his liberal Democrat leaders than standing for Hoosiers. In Missouri, Democratic Senator McCaskill's Republican challenger, Josh Hawley, has attacked her position on Kavanaugh 10 times on Twitter since Friday. And in Montana, Democratic incumbent Senator Jon Tester's opposition to Kavanaugh was a big part of the recent Senate debate with his Republican challenger. Take a listen.
Myself and a lot of the people across this nation are very disturbed with the way this entire process was handled. There's a man who has a commendable record, 300 decisions that he has written, and he should be serving on the bench, and absolutely I would vote for him.
Let me bring in a couple of political strategists from each side of the aisle. Joining me now is Michael Steele, former aide to Jeb Bush and John Boehner, and Democratic pollster Anna Greenberg. All right, guys and gals, thank you for being on. Michael Steele, let me start with you. There's a lot of anecdotal being shared with people like me. I'm sure you're getting anecdotal. How much do you think Kavanaugh is helping the Republican base right now, and how would you describe Kavanaugh in general? Is it a net positive or a net negative?
It's a net positive. I think that leaving aside the facts or the allegations, in terms of political perception, there's a lot of people in America who think he's getting a raw deal, a lot of people who think he's being criticized and attacked for standing up for protecting unborn human life and the Second Amendment, and a lot of people who, look, if you look at the numbers in states like Indiana, West Virginia, Missouri, North Dakota, these are all places where a Democratic incumbent senator will be hurt by a no vote on Kavanaugh.
Anna, you're polling in a lot of these places. Is it universal or is it depending on where you poll?
Well, first of all, the national numbers are pretty clear. His favorability has gone down. The number of people who want him to be confirmed has gone down. So the notion that this whole churning this week was somehow a net positive for Republicans seems nuts to me, including 65% of people who believe Ford, which is well beyond the share of the vote that are voting for Democrats. I think this is a particular problem for Republicans in suburban districts, in districts that have large populations of white collar and professional women who are already pretty angry and, pretty involved, pretty exercised, volunteering, giving money. I think this is just like another piece of, another insult, another, offense for people that just keeps them engaged with the election.
But address the specific states, though, that Michael addressed. Missouri, Indiana. I played a clip from the Montana debate. We have North Dakota, West Virginia. It plays a little different there.
So you have to say that Kavanaugh helps in those states, you have to assume that the people who support Trump are already engaged. We've seen actually in the last month an increase in Republican engagement, probably a return to the norm around Republican turnout in midterms. I'm just not sure that Kavanaugh adds more to it. I'm just not sure. I feel like the base is pretty consolidated on the Republican side. They're already increasing intensity pre-Kavanaugh. I'm just not sure how much more. It's really a partisan fight more than anything else.
Michael, what do you make of that analysis?
No, I think that it's wrong. I think that Democrats have been energized because of their opposition, their white-hot hatred of President Trump, and this is an issue that is energizing Republicans, bringing more Republicans to the polls. We're not yet seeing that erosion that you would expect in suburban areas. And in the House, this offers some Republicans in moderate districts the opportunity to get a little distance from the president. If you look at Leonard Lance in New Jersey, for example, he praised Senator Flake for calling for the investigation and delay. That probably plays pretty well in his more moderate, affluent, college-educated district.
But, Michael, let me ask you this. So let's say you get Kavanaugh confirmed Friday or Saturday. We're still waiting for the election where voters show up to say thank you.
Look, there's no question that the Supreme Court is a big issue, going to be a big issue. It was in 2016. It will be in these midterms. But we are still several weeks away from, which is an eternity in this news cycle. So whatever happens on Kavanaugh in the next couple of days, there will be a whole new series of events, a whole new series of outrages, a whole new series of fights between now and November 6th.
I rest my case.
So you just believe that, while, yes, maybe they're getting some enthusiasm bump, maybe it's mixed in with Labor Day, and you just think it will pass?
Post-Labor Day, two things have happened. One, there's been a pretty big shift away from Trump, especially in the toss-up districts, and I'm seeing it. I'm involved in a lot of races, and I'm seeing pre-post even like 10-point shifts in the generic congressional, 10-point shifts in, or even, more on Trump's favorability and job approval. And at the same time, there's been more Republican energy. This is in motion, post-Labor Day. People are concentrating, they're focusing. To me, Kavanaugh, if it somehow had been derailed, I actually think it probably would have led to, on the right, a pretty severe reaction.
Well, that's actually.
But the thing is, he's probably going to be confirmed. But he's
what
not
going to.
He's probably. I'm very cynical about this.
I understand that, but if he is derailed, you think that could have that sort of perverse effect, meaning it actually rallies the right?
Absolutely, but it will also rally the left even more because they won something in the context of complete Republican control. And so I just think it's going to be, in that sense, a net neutral.
And Michael, I am curious. I have heard two different arguments from Republicans on this. If Kavanaugh goes down, there's the conventional one that Anna's arguing that sort of, yes, this is going to rally the right. But then there's another that I think Kimberly Strassel makes the argument, no. We're going to blame you, Mitch McConnell, and you scaredy cat Republicans.
No, I think what's going to happen is if Kavanaugh doesn't get the confirmation, one, you're going to have a hugely outraged Republican base. They're going to be excited to turn out on Election Day, and there is still time to nominate another Supreme Court nominee between now and Election Day. You're going to be able to avenge Kavanaugh and support this new, probably just as conservative nominee.
By the way, Lindsey Graham calls for renominating Kavanaugh.
I saw that. Look, but I mean, when Republicans...
okay.
I don't think that's going to work.
Every time the Republicans lose, which they have on everything but the tax bill, right? They've actually not been able to do anything. There's lots of stuff happening in federal agencies, but I mean, in terms of legislative victories, it actually hurts them. Like losing the health care, introducing that legislation and losing it hurt them. So the notion that losing Kavanaugh isn't going to hurt Republicans in the sense of not your rabid, very ideological Trump supporters, but your kind of average Republican who sees dysfunction and complete Republican control and can't get this guy through, and in fact probably wonder why did they try in the first place if they knew he had these problems.
Let me ask you both to tell me what a middle ground is on this issue, or can you not have a middle ground on this? And I'll start with you.
In what respect?
Heidi Heitkamp.
Sure.
How do you help her find a middle ground here where she knows the majority of her constituents think Kavanaugh should be on board?
Well, first of all, I'm not clear that Supreme Court issue that Supreme Court matters as much as pundits like to say it does, right? Your average voter is like consumed with healthcare costs and, hating the discourse, hating the fighting. They tune it out. They think everyone's to blame. So I wouldn't overstate how much this vote matters for these red state Republicans. The middle ground is saying, look, I'm okay. I will vote for a conservative, for the court.
Right.
As long as they are, not a sexual harasser, not, a conspiracy theorist. I mean, the middle ground is to say, I'm going to vote for a perfectly qualified conservative. It is not that I am against voting for a conservative.
That was what the Joe Donnelly statement was when he came out against
well, there you go.
Kavanaugh.
I'm not advising him.
No, but that is sort of, he's saying, I voted for Judge Gorsuch and I would vote for another.
Right.
Michael Steele, do it the other way. What's the middle ground for, say, Dean Heller and Martha McSally?
Oh, I was going to do red. I think that people do vote on these issues in red states. I also think that if the FBI completes the investigation, finds no corroborating evidence, finds no new facts, I think it's going to be very hard for senators like Tester and Heitkamp and Manchin and McCaskill to go back to their constituents and explain why they voted no on a man that was cleared by the FBI.
Well, what do you do about it if you're Dean Heller or Martha McSally, where you're dealing with swing voters that they're uncomfortable the other way?
I think Heller is in the Senate. He's going to have to take a vote. He's probably going to vote yes. And I think that McSally and, say, Marsha Blackburn, who's another potentially vulnerable Republican who's not in office yet, can probably come up with a statement that as long as the FBI clears this nominee, they would be supportive.
Michael Steele, Anna Greenberg. Thank you guys for disagreeing without being disagreeable.
Possible.
It is possible. It was a well thought out and well done back and forth. Thank you both. Much appreciated. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.